know I talk about slavery a lot on this channel, but stay with me today because the particular question I got is one that I have not answered or addressed before, and I cannot wait to tackle this from every single angle. So here's the comment. Hi Brandon, a question for you, or more like a scenario. You are God, and you have a people you've just rescued from slavery. These people have already shown you that they don't listen so well and are a stiff-necked people. That's a verse in the Bible. They are surrounded by other people groups who have slaves themselves. All this takes place in the world of Leviticus. How do you abolish slavery? How do you stop your people from owning slaves? Snap of a finger? Kill anyone who buys a slave? They've already shown you that they don't listen to instruction, and therefore you know for a certainty they will eventually start owning slaves. So how do you do it, Brandon? How do you abolish slavery in that world? Now, I wanted to take this as a good faith question. Maybe it's a seeking Christian, maybe it is a doubter, maybe it is an atheist who's just putting forward, hey, you should round this out. But I went through the comment history and it ends with them saying, I believe in a very powerful and wise God. He knew what he was doing back then as he does now. So no, this is an apologetic of sorts. This is trying to turn it around on me, and I am all too happy to answer this. But I want to first just show what's happening. This commenter has moved the question from should God have condoned slavery, which Leviticus 25:44-46. We're not going to argue about that today. Indeed, he did condone slavery, and it would seem like this commenter is acknowledging that. Well, okay, he had to because all of those horrible reasons listed. How would you have done it if you're so smart? So we're no longer asking, is Yahweh's moral code good? It's asking if I specifically can design a better one for Bronze Age individuals, which by the way, yes, I can, and I will here at the end of the video. So to start, I want to expose the hidden assumptions here. Here's what I see when I read between the lines. Because the people are rebellious, God then cannot be blamed for not outlawing slavery. That's assumption number one, but there's problems here. The Bible already assumes many other things, like God still expects obedience from, yes, even stiff-necked people in dozens of other places. God still gives hard countercultural commands around idol worship and sex and circumcision, Sabbath and diet and many other things. And yes, he still holds those people responsible even when they break them. He still outlawed them. If people's disobedience is enough to excuse God from condemning slavery, then that same excuse should hold up to excuse him from and then start condoning things like idol worship, adultery and sexual sin, same-sex acts, witchcraft, the list goes on. I mean, there's like 600. Slavery's not one of them, though. Already you should be able to see how fastly this ridiculous kind of argument crumbles, but we're not even close to being done with this. Assumption 2 is a false dilemma, that the only tools at God's disposal would be to snap and miraculously make slavery go away, which, by the way, is this not an all-powerful God? Did you know you could actually do this kind of thing as God and still give free will? Because that's the other thing they'll always say. I always think this. I think, what if God just made it impossible for people to hurt children? It never entered their brain. It wasn't an option. They could still have all the free will to rob and lie and gossip, but we could protect people. Same thing with slavery. So yeah, I mean, the magic finger snap is an option. It's not one of the only two options, as this commenter tries to make us think. The other one was just to murder everyone who tries. Unrealistic for the God that killed a guy for picking up sticks on the wrong day of the week? I don't think so. And yes, again, there's so much in between. How about clear moral commands? How about better legal structures, economic reforms, social incentives, and yeah, miraculous enforcement in extreme cases? You know, like parting the Red Sea or the 10 plagues, those things that he did to already abolish one form of slavery when it's against his people. Now you're saying, oh, he can't do magic anymore? Yikes, this is a bad comment the more that I look at it. Assumption number 3 that I see here and everywhere else is that Bronze Age culture limits God. Limits God, especially God that claims to be all-powerful, should not even be a sentence that can exist. Just like when people say God needed to do X. Really? They say in the world of Leviticus, like God is just trapped in this little time frame. You know, the same God that is claimed to be outside of time and space. But keep in mind, this is the God who created everything. He made the world from nothing. He rains bread from heaven. Imagine if the critique was something like, God let so many innocent people starve to death in the wilderness. Well, Brandon, what did you expect him to do? Snap his magic fingers or just let everyone die? Going back to the false dilemma from earlier, it seems God chose to snap his magic fingers. This God speaks audibly from the mountains. He leads these people physically in a pillar of fire and a pillar of cloud. And yet you paint him as some government official of a Bronze Age group nervously making sure he gets reelected by bending to the cultural norms of the people, even though we don't see that anywhere else, literally anywhere else in the Bible. The whole point is that this God shatters human expectations. So I had planned to do this next part where I was going to re-go through all the verses and explain the difference between indentured servitude and the foreign owning of slaves. But I've covered that enough. And if you want to make those arguments in this video, fine. I'm not going to respond to them. They've been covered so much. This is about the idea that there was no good way at this time for this God to completely abolish slavery, which is one of the main apologetics by honest Christians who see clearly in the text the condoning of slavery, but not quite honest enough to see why their argument fails. So here's what an actual good God could have done in the world of Leviticus. And I'm going to stay in your lane. We're going to play your game. We'll stay in the same time period, the same geography. We'll use only methods that the Bible already at this point has attributed to this same God. And step one would be the simplest of them all and one we don't get. State the moral truth clearly and repeatedly. Shellfish, bad. Bacon, bad. Mixed fabrics, bad. Gay people, abominations. Slavery, go ahead. Imagine if it was slavery abomination, but it's not. So instead we play your hypothetical game of they were going to disobey anyways, so what was God to do? Start by letting them know it's bad. Give them the chance to obey or disobey. And to counter all of the exceptions that we get from the Bible about slavery, we could be really specific here. No human may be owned as property. You shall not buy or sell humans. I'll even give you the indentured servitude, the debt economy of the time, just for the sake of the argument. You shall not hold anyone in forced service beyond limited terms. That includes their wife or the child that was born into it. Because even in the indentured servitude economy, you can read this for yourself, if the man got married as an indentured servant and they had a child, the child and the wife were owned by the master forever. That means children, even in Israelite community, were born into slavery. And yet this is the point twisted by twisted Christians that say, look how many of the indentured servants chose to stay. They must have had good masters. It must have not really been that bad. No, the option was stay and be a slave for life, and you can be with your wife and child, or leave and they're mine. How utterly sick that that is somehow an apologetic for the goodness of God. And then again, let's throw around that abomination word. Whoever treats another human being as property is an abomination before my eyes. That's only 4 commands. That doesn't take up too much space. We have 800,000 words to work with in this Bible. We have 600 other commands from this God. 4 that could have changed literally the course of human history. But an all-perfect, all-powerful, all-knowing God couldn't do this? Come on now. So step 1 are the commands. Step 2, severe penalties. Again, playing by God's own rulebook here, what we see elsewhere, even within the Torah, in the Levitical world. Some of the things you can be killed for by this God include adultery, blasphemy, witchcraft, idolatry, gathering sticks, and cursing your parents, but not owning another human being. Now, I'm not advocating for the death penalty for absolutely everything here, but to act like God, this God, doesn't already do that and couldn't have added that to owning slaves is silly. And a verse that people who try to make apologetics for slavery love is showing that God kills people for kidnapping. They try to say that that's how you know he's against slavery. No, he's against people stealing people's property. That's a theft crime. So we can kill for the kidnapping, but not for when other people have already been kidnapped and then you go and buy them and own them and pass them down to your children. They're still kidnapped people. Like the kidnapping thing is my least favorite excuse, but we can use it here because God has a death penalty for it. Do you see the inconsistency? Also, the fact that this perfect God can't connect the dots between the difference of, okay, kidnapping bad, deserves death. Buying a kidnapped person, no problem. Like, all of us are so aware that that's not a good excuse. And we know so because when we talk about the transatlantic slave trade, going to a foreign country to purchase slaves, do you know where those slaves started? As kidnapped people. We don't say that the chattel slavery that happened in the South was okay just because they were actually purchased. Well, actually, many people did say just that because they had the Bible to fall back on. So if this God could have just explained one step further, again, owning people in general, bad, don't do. At least there wouldn't have been biblical justification for this kind of thing for millennia, really. Step 3. Let's get creative. How about some economic reforms to even prevent debt slavery in the first place, which is really not the main point that we're focused on, but would have helped. We've seen a lot of these things since, but this God couldn't come up with it and introduce it in the Levitical days. Like, I'm not an economist here, but there are so many things that can be done to improve an economic society, especially when you're an all-wise, all-powerful God. The solution is just own people. Kind of like they're just a product of their time and place and no God is involved. Step 4, we can just get a bit more specific with the legal code. You want to reserve the right to servants? Fine, let's define it though, not property. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but we had everything we needed to make this happen. It's not like we're talking about cavemen. These were people with moral codes. These are people with contracts and agreements and rule and law. We can't come up with some good labor contracts for these servants to make sure that they are not abused and taken advantage of. Instead, this God literally gives the very loopholes needed to own even indentured servants for life. And then we'll give you your last point. Some miraculous intervention, some finger snapping. God killed people on the spot for touching the ark even when they were trying to catch it from falling and being disgraced. Even in the New Testament, he kills Ananias and Sapphira for lying about a tithe. He killed the sons of Aaron for offering strange fire. He killed the family of Achan because Achan held back some of the booty from war instead of giving it to God. He sends entire plagues for disobedience. He topples nations for idolatry and injustice. He has an angel come down and kill 70,000 men for the sin of David. He floods the whole earth. He kills the firstborn. If you really want a God who takes slavery serious, imagine him applying any of that to slavery. Imagine if this God had said, anyone who owns slaves to their home, I will bring a plague. If you beat your servant, your line will be cut off. If you kidnap or buy men, I will destroy your crops and your name. Curses for those who break the law, blessings for those who uphold it. You know, the thing we see everywhere else with every other law. Sounds brutal, but it's exactly how this God already operates. Here's what we know. If God cares about something and he doesn't want it to happen, regardless of the culture at the time, he outlaws it and then he enforces it with strict rule. So if slavery is not outlawed, and if it is condoned, what does that tell us about this God? It's unbelievably simple. He doesn't see the owning of people as inherently wrong. This could be the end of the story, the end of the episode, the end of the answer, and it would be completely handled. Let's go just a bit deeper. Yes, slavery was a thing in the ancient world. Slavery's still a thing now, by the way. By all accounts, even more so. Some of that has to do with a larger total population, but still. But in some places, many places, throughout the 18th and 19th century, slavery began to get abolished. Not by God, not by any new laws from God, not by any new interventions from God. Yes, sometimes by Christians, despite the fact that they were the ones who helped enforce it for so long. We don't give credit to the arsonist who puts out his own fire. So we'll just say people here in general. It was people, stiff-necked, stupid, ignorant, non-perfect, non-all-powerful people developed moral arguments about how slavery is wrong, moral arguments that you, commenter, probably believe. They built abolitionist movements. They pressured states and governments to abolish slavery, to make it law. And so if they and we, as such fallen, stupid, rebellious people, can find out on our own that it's wrong to own slaves, without miracles, without perfect knowledge, without divine intervention, is it not bizarre to claim that an all-knowing, and I know I'm being redundant, but man, I hope it gets through to you, all-powerful, moral author of Levitical law, somehow couldn't do better than you may buy people from the nations around you and own them as property and keep them as property for life and pass them down as inheritance to your children? If you and I as 21st century flawed individuals can sit here and sketch out a better moral argument, which I think I answered your question. You said, so how would you do it, Brandon? I don't know if you're asking how would I do it if I were God, which I laid out very clearly, or how would I do it if I were just a man? But if you're asking about me as just a man, it's really beside the point. We're talking about a God. But even as a man, I can do better than this God with one step, saying don't do it. So if you and I can sketch out now a better blueprint to at least get it to go down, not up, than Leviticus gives. What does that say about the author of Leviticus? To me, it says they're man-made and a product of their time and place. But to you, it screams perfect God, wise and powerful, as you said in your follow-up comment. I don't see wisdom or power. So this can now be the video I point to every single time I get that as an excuse when I bring up slavery, that God had to work within the time and place and culture. No, he didn't. Let me know what I missed. I'm sure there's a bunch more we can add to this to round it out and make it even more foolproof, but my goodness, thank you for being here. I'll see you Sunday with a new video, and until then, keep thinking. I wanted to personally thank my top tiers of support, my Iconoclast, Ann, Boris, Chris, Grant, GVI, Jimmy, Joe, Kitboga, yep, the Kitboga, Matthew, Perry, and Shawn. My Humanist heroes, Chris, Craig, James, Jarrod, and Kristi. My Atheist advocates, Aquitar, Caleb, Dakota, Dan, Drew, Jeff, Jeffrey, Jeremy, Jugs, Julie, Malcolm, Paul, Sparky, and Thomas, as well as all of my secular scholar patrons. Would you consider joining these fine people?